I will talk about my experience with Remix and all the things that happened before Remix with me and in the sense like me and the web. Um, so I will talk about why this is the ultimate full stack framework for me in 2024. We are halfway through 2024. I still think this is the ultimate experience, but I will try to give you some proof of that. Again, thanks for the intro. I will say a couple of words about me and then talk about the brief history of web development, at least from my perspective. And then what experience I had with React, and did React fix the things, the problems that I experienced with web development in the past 20 years. And finally, why I think Remix is the answer to all these problems. All right, so let's get started. My background. So you saw the intro. I'm a software engineer at Abbey. I started building websites as a kid. It was kind of cool to make some side income. I mean, not even side income, just an income as a 15 years old. So that was cool. I built websites for, I don't know, bakeries, local shops, for the local school. It was quite a defining experience in my life, and I enjoyed it a lot. Since then, I dabbled with my own company. I did some freelancing. But overall, I spent the past 20 years doing some form of web development. I write a lot. I published books, courses, and when I'm bored, I write again. So I have this dev newsletter on Substack. You can check that out. I also have my developer blog with full of articles related to React, testing React, React components. I write about browser plugin development, desktop applications. All this with React and TypeScript, of course. You can also find me on X. So, okay, that's me. And now let's talk about the brief history of web development from my perspective. So for me, it started here. I don't know how many of you recognize this application. This is a Macromedia Dreamweaver that was acquired by Adobe at some point. But this is where I first met with the web. This is a drag and drop tool. Pretty ugly by today's standards, probably, but it was quite nice. You could code up, actually drag and drop a website pretty fast, but you could still see the code and see what's going on in the background. Of course, I built static websites with this, so I put links there, images, and things like that. And that was fine at the beginning, but quickly the need for like more well, not interactive, but more use cases showed up. For example, this bakery said, "Hey, I want a guest book," and then this other shop said, "I want some want to give the users a way to register," and things like that. So I tried eventually PHP. We will return to this snippet because something like this has been floating around in the JavaScript community since server components are a thing. But it's really interesting, and I just wanted to point out that to me, this was the first full stack experience almost 20 years ago. And I really liked how simple this was. That my business logic and my representation layer, everything was front of me on the same page, and I could really like do quick iterations on my websites. And it was really simple, and I think that contributed a lot to the fact that I continued doing web development, and that I enjoyed it. I still enjoy. Of course, it had some drawbacks. Of course, there was no dynamic experience with stuff like this, which I realized that will become a problem because interactive websites started popping up, with all the nice menus, the JavaScript animations and drop-downs. So I felt that the need for client-side JavaScript is rising. And then I went to university. I landed my first job as a software engineer, and I started building client applications, but different client applications. I started working in technology that's called Jakarta server faces or Java server faces, and this was. So the previous snippet, the PHP thing, was like the full stack server side rendered thing that I met almost 20 years ago. This was a bit later, but this is where I met the component based development and this whole component, let's build up the UI from components philosophy. This was around 2014, 13. So this was Java server faces. It had a nice separation of concerns. You had your business logic in your enterprise Java beans. You had UI templates, and you had components. So here is a code snippet. Actually, this is how these pages were built up. You can see here this accordion panel. Well, in today's React world, this accordion panel would be an accordion React component. So again, an idea I met somewhere before. I thought it was cool, and this is how we built these big JSF websites. Of course, there was a drawback again. It wasn't interactivity, it was the speed of development. These things were terribly slow to work with. Because the front end and the back end was in this tight coupling, changes to CSS files, like changing the color of something, sometimes took like 30 seconds to redeploy, which is really frustrating if you want to iterate on something quickly. So it was mostly the slow compile times that made us think like, okay, is there any alternative? And what we could do instead of this? So at that time, a couple of frameworks like appeared from nowhere. They had a similar philosophy. They were lightweight MVC frameworks, and they were quite amazing. And we didn't really, we were surprised in this major shift in our development practice. So before, everything was deployed as a Java application and everything was neatly packaged up. And suddenly we could write really small like JavaScript applications that were calling just some API endpoints, fetching the data, parsing it through some templates, and showing it to the client. And suddenly those 2-minute deploy times or half-a-minute deploy times disappeared. We could host these small front ends separately from our backend, from the main application. And once we changed the theme or a color of something, or just added a new interaction, we didn't have to redeploy the whole thing. We just updated the static assets on some server, and it was working again. It brought a couple of other beneficial things. Each team could do their own thing. So the backend was doing their Java thing or Python or whatever it was, and they were happy about that. And we didn't really care. We had these little JavaScript applications, and all we were interacting with were their API endpoints. And This was fun for quite a long time because of the development times, because we didn't have to really deploy the JavaScript application, and from hiring perspective as well, because people with only JavaScript experience started to appear, so we could hire great talent. So overall, this was great. But this is the moment in time where a pattern started to emerge. And in the beginning, we looked at this pattern as like, oh, this is this new cool UI element we have to introduce. We will find a nice animation and just put it everywhere where we need it. And this component, this pattern, was the loading indicator. And suddenly we were full of loading indicators. We had huge dashboards with many, many components, and suddenly everything was just spinning around. And we did this in different languages. We did this in Backbone. We repeated the same thing in Angular. And although how we wrote front-end code and what practices we used improved, the overall experience kind of remained the same. And well, this is how we arrived at these loading indicators, and and then I will switch to my next topic, which is React. So after trying a bunch of these front-end technologies and working our way up to this indicator hell, we of course had to try React. And React was this really, it had big promises, and we were sold on React. I don't think we made a bad call. I still do React after 10 years, so I think that it is a good call. But fundamentally, it didn't change the experience on our applications, because let's be honest, well, we pretty much do this in every application, or did at some point in the past, that we coded up these loading indicators, and it was just a loading. It was the same loading that we did 5-10 years ago, just in a different language. And again, the tooling got better, the patterns are better, and the development is overall a better experience now. But we kind of stuck with these loading things. And one of the biggest drawbacks of these loading indicator patterns is the layout shift and that it causes on the websites. I prepared here a video. I don't know if I can. I don't see the controls. Oh, I see it now. Okay, so I will play this. This is from Google. So if you don't know what the layout shifts are, this basically happens in these applications where you don't render an element while you don't have the data that's needed for that element to render. So let's say you arrive to a web shop and you put like 56 stickers into your cart, and you made a mistake. You wanted to type 5, but you accidentally hit 6 as well. And imagine something is going on in the background. You started maybe a fetch inside the use effect, and it's loading, but the user is ready to cancel this order and click no go back. But at the same time, this response arrives and you render this additional element, and the user ends up clicking the yes, place my order button, which is a really, really frustrating experience, and there is nothing you can do. Your order is complete. So this was one of the most annoying things with these layout shifts, and this was all thanks to these loading indicators that React did not introduce these loading indicators. These were introduced in our case with the JSF, sorry, not the JSF, but with Backbone And later we migrated these indicators and these layout shift techniques to other languages. But this was not the fault of React, and React also didn't solve this problem. So it's probably time to talk about why Remix is interesting to me. After you heard all my frustrations with 15 years of development and the loading indicators. So Remix was probably, so when I tried Remix for the first time, it really felt like this snippet from the beginning of my presentation, where you had everything on the same page, your business logic, and the how you are going to represent this thing that you are fetching. So here, everything you need to know about this user comes from this query, and on these lines, you are just printing the username. And this is pretty much the same in Remix. Of course, don't do this in production, obviously. This is just an example. But in Remix, you have basically side-by-side your representation and the business logic that fetches the thing that your representation layer needs. But yeah, let's not talk about PHP, but talk about React. This is a React conference after all. So let's see how Remix enhanced React, what it gave to React, and what it took away, because I think Remix takes away from React a lot, and that's a good thing. For example, states. I made many of these components. This is terrible practice. You have a huge form, many use states, and for every interaction, you save the value of that input in a React state, and that's how you end up with these huge forms. So one of the first applications I coded with Remix was a SaaS boilerplate. It was a multi-tenant, feature-rich boilerplate application, and I went through the tutorials. I will give you links to those at the end, but I followed the tutorials and I implemented my own idea. And at the end, I made an experiment and I was like, okay, let's see how many use states I have in this whole code base. And to my surprise, but by the way, this is an open source template. You can get it at this URL. To my surprise, there was one use state in the entire application. And later you will see exactly why and how Remix achieves this. But yeah, so it took away a lot of these repetitive use states that you had because you had a big form or something like that. It took away something else, loading. So this loading pattern is probably familiar to everyone. This is where you have the state that will hold the thing that you fetch, and then you have the loading state that indicates if the fetch is still ongoing, and then the use effect that kicks off when the page mounts. And this is essentially gone with Remix, and it's replaced by this elegant loader pattern. You have this use loader data that Remix exposes. It's a built-in function of Remix. And essentially, when the fetch is complete and you have your user, your page gets rendered. There is no need for this use effect and use state structures anymore. So this is the loader. One great built-in thing of Remix. The other great built-in thing of Remix is an action or actions. So these are the functions that are called when you post or submit a form on a Remix page. So again, if you remember my example from PHP, this is really close to that level of experience, because right here I have my form, how it's represented, how the inputs look like, and then a couple of lines above I have my business logic that takes the data from the form. And this is, by the way, I mentioned that Remix eliminates the need for this use to these intermediary use states where you can store your data while your form is not submitted. So you don't need that, because Remix can access this form data here through your request. And the next great built-in thing is this use navigation hook, and you can clearly see at this point that Remix is made by folks who care about web development and actively do web development and build great websites, because it just has all these built-in things that you will likely use in a web application. Like, you will probably disable that submit button once the user clicks it, so they cannot submit the same thing like multiple times. And they exposed a simple hook for this. You don't have to code this feature up anymore. And another manifestation of why this entire framework is so well thought out is that they aren't relying on some made up objects or proprietary methods, or they didn't reinvent the wheel. They built Remix on web standards, so there is no need to for example, if you work at a big tech company or even like a medium-sized tech company, you would have to explain to your manager, like, yeah, I need these new 5 dependencies to do this cool new thing. Well, that's a problem, because now that becomes your obligation to take care of those things, and to like essentially that's your problem. Here, Remix uses the standard APIs, the standard web API, for example, form data, the object that this returns is in the standard. This object from entries, also a built-in JavaScript object. So there is less magic, less proprietary APIs, and more standards. So you can still so you can clearly see, I think at least, that this is made for faster adoption, and that's a really cool thing. And when we are talking about faster adoption, Remix also cares about developers, because, as I just mentioned, when you work at a company, you have to justify these technology changes and sometimes even version bumps. So Remix did this cool thing, and they are actually rebranding themselves to, but not rebranding, they are becoming part of React Router. So instead of releasing Remix 3, they will release those features as part of React Router 7. And this is a huge thing, because React Router right now is used by around 8 million open repositories on GitHub. It was used in all React applications I ever worked with, both as a contractor or a software engineer. So it's a technology that's almost, or maybe it is as old as React. I don't know exactly when it was released, but it's a really old technology that kind of grew with React, and many people adopted it. And now the Remix team made this great move by saying, okay, we don't want people to adopt another shiny new thing and to explain to their managers like, oh, we now want to do Remix because Remix is cool on X, or I don't know. They will make this part of React Router 7, which will make the adoption even faster. So that's some big brain moment from the Remix team. Congrats. And finally, what you can do to adopt Remix as fast as you can go to remix.run and check out their 30-minute tutorial. I recommend that. I did the 5-minute, I did all of their tutorials. The 30-minute tutorial is all you need. It's as surprising it is, it's 30 minutes, but it's a deep dive into everything that you will use in most of your web applications. If that's not enough, I covered in this series on my blog a couple of edge cases, like including form inputs and whatnot, that I felt I have to write about, and that they were missing from the tutorial. And that's all from me. Thanks for having me at this conference, and